Chapter 1 Heroes. The light from the other side of the portal hurt my eyes. It took me a while to recognize my surroundings as I limped into my living room. "That's weird," I muttered as Sai cautiously sat me on the couch. "Out of all the places to go, I never figured Jacob would pick this place." "With all the places we've been to, I don't know about you, but I'm happy to see a place that doesn't have a demon or two waiting to rip us a new one," Pete rebutted. "Thanks, Sai, I should be all right now," I replied as she reluctantly released me. "Okay," she replied, still hesitant, as if she was waiting to catch a leaning tower. I leaned back and rested my head on our living room chair. My head was still ringing from our last battle, and I couldn't shake it. I looked over at Sam. He was out of it. He lay unconscious as Eve hovered over him, concerned. "How long do you think he'll be out?" she asked, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I thought he was invincible." "It's his body that's indestructible, not his mind. He probably just sent his body into an overloaded state. My dad says it happens when you overexert yourself," Sai answered, looking him over. "He can probably hear everything we're saying, but the body is weak, and when you overload, you can be in that state for a while. It's similar to a coma. He'll be fine. His body just needs to recoup." The rest of us were too preoccupied with our new visitor to notice Sam's condition. We all stared at her like she was supposed to perform or something. "Okay, let's hear it," Luke prodded. "Hear what?" she replied, annoyed. "I don't know. Who you are, powers, the whole spill," he continued. "Powers, none of your business. My name is Danielle, period, end of story," she replied with a smug indifference. "The rest you can get from Jade and Max." "Dude, why did I expect you to be a sweet little girl when every person we've met from the Heaven Realm has either been crazy or a jerk?" Luke replied. "Because you're stupid," she replied. "I may be a child to you, but I'm close to 10 times your age, so stop calling me a little girl." "Well, excuse me, last time I checked, we weren't the ones calling you a little girl," Pete added. "That honor goes to Jade and Max." "That's because to them I am a little girl," she replied. "Man, for a smart guy, you're not too bright." "What did you say?" Pete replied. "It's better to keep your mouth shut and be believed a foolish man than to open your mouth and remove all doubt," she replied snidely. "Think about that before you speak." Man, I thought the two boys were brats, but this girl was a sharp-tongued, arrogant piece of work. She was beyond beautiful, even for a girl her age. Her blonde hair was shoulder-length without so much as a split end. She had beautiful brown eyes that were piercing a hole through me as she stared. "Is it true that your mother is Leah Eli?" she replied. Yeah," I replied, looking around suspiciously. "Well, you definitely took after your mother and father in the looks department," she responded, catching me off guard. "You and your brother are good-looking for Earthborn kids." Sai and Eve chuckled as she stood oblivious to what they found so funny about her comments. "What?" I replied, caught off guard. "Well, your face. It's nice. That isn't common for someone your age," she replied, speaking slowly like she was talking to a 2-year-old. "It's impressive. It's just an observation. Why are you guys acting like I have 12 heads?" "You're a little young to be focusing on the looks of boys twice your age, don't you think?" I responded, looking at her with a raised eyebrow. She stared daggers at me, rolling her eyes, exhausted by the immaturity around her. She rubbed her temples like she had a bad headache as she continued. "Grow up and get your mind out of the gutter and stop acting like simple-minded Earthborn brats, please. It was a compliment," she replied, brushing me off and crossing her legs in a sophisticated manner. "I'm centuries older than he is. It's normal for people in the Heaven Realm to compliment looks, because looks can be controlled by shifting through DNA and picking out what you like the most. Unattractiveness is not such a sensitive subject where I'm from. I forget it is on Earth, but I wasn't making a pass at him. I was just impressed that his face was natural random genetic code." "So people can change anything in their DNA?" Beth asked, confused. Only cosmetically, and it has to be rich enough in their gene pool to manifest. It skews the looks in my realm to the good-looking side. Anyways, it's sort of a novelty thing to be naturally good-looking, she continued, before stopping as if she wanted to slap herself for humoring us. Why am I even explaining this to Earthborn kids like you, as if you would ever understand? You do know that technically you're not centuries older than us, right? Pete replied. Our time goes slower than yours, but in actuality, we're still older than you because the same amount of time has passed, even if it was faster in your time. Like I just said, it would take me days to explain this stuff to you brats, the little girl replied. Do you know how many experiences I've experienced in the small amount of time you guys have been alive? Ugh, Sam grumbled as Sai placed her hand on his head. Wow, he's burning up, she said, wincing in pain as he pulled away. It was that white flame. Did any of you see what Sam did? Did you get a chance to see that weird white flame that covered his body when he got angry? Eve asked, tending to him. No, I was too busy watching for their attack to notice. Me too, they all answered at different times. Well, 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 I heard from behind me. I recognized the voice right away. Michael, I gushed, struggling to my feet. Everyone turned to see him sitting at the top of the stairs. His legs were extended as his hair hung in front of his face. I'll tell you one thing, you guys never cease to amaze me, he continued. So not only did you guys get the ambassador's daughter, you got the missing twins, defeated an A-class horde of lust demons, won a full-fledged battle with an S-class rebel legion, and took down a fallen rebel base. And you did it all in one night. Whoa! Bravo! Not bad for a legion of rookies, huh, Mikey? Luke replied with a smirk. Not bad at all, Jacob seconded with a high five. Michael chuckled to himself, fighting back his bursting pride. Man, I never really thought about it that way. I was just glad we got out of there in one piece. Well, some of us, but with all things being considered, I guess we did all right, added Pete, proudly clinching his belt. Who would have thought a month ago we would be capable of doing the things we can do now? I mean, when you think about it, it's pretty amazing. I shook my head humbly. As brash as they sounded, they had a point. I mean, a month before, we couldn't even fall from the sky without help from Michael. Now we were superhumans with the ability to outmatch a battalion that had us outmanned in both power and experience. We had come a long way. I felt every bump and bruise, but things could have been a lot worse. It was impressive, Michael acknowledged, cracking his knuckles. But now the hard part begins. His words caught me off guard. I cringed at the sudden onset of pain. The room began to spin. I must have gotten up too fast. I fought to calm and center my thoughts. The others didn't notice my uncomfortable predicament. Their focus was on Michael's words. Hard part? What do you mean, hard part? Eve uttered. Michael raised his hand, motioning for them to quiet down so he could explain. It's just as I told you guys before, he replied. Yes, you guys are impressive, but so are the million or so other legions you might be facing at the trials. The Light Guard is the most prestigious institution in existence. There isn't a prophet, angel, or remnant that's worth their salt who hasn't trained there, yours truly included. So these guys we're up against, is it like their life's ambition? Pete questioned, almost afraid of the answer Michael would give. Yep, and some of their lives span a couple centuries. These prospects use every opportunity they can to polish their resumes enough to get a chance to attend the Light Guard Academy, he explained, finally rising from the stairs with a slight smirk. Don't worry though, he continued. I've seen countless legions, and trust me, you guys are special. Just keep doing what you're doing. You guys will do fine. Yeah, no sweat. We're just going up against elites that have trained every waking moment for an opportunity to get into this place. Not to mention, they probably don't think too highly of us, Eve replied sarcastically. I mean, we not only got to skip years of service, but we had to be talked into doing it. Yeah, we're gonna be really popular with these guys. Well, it's funny to hear you say that, because technically you guys kind of already are, said a voice, catching us all out of nowhere. Ah! I let out, as the searing pain from the BAU surged through my already throbbing head. I pressed my fingers against my temples in an attempt to numb the piercing pain. Come on, man, my head is already ringing, Max, I pleaded, as Max chimed in, adding to the conversation. I'm sorry, Tim, he apologized. The sound of his voice mixed with the searing headache I was experiencing was close to unbearable. Ah, Max, that didn't help, I continued. Another piercing sting exploded through as another familiar voice chimed in. You've got to get that power of yours under control, Tim, added Jade, making matters worse. Jade, I grunted angrily, this is really not the time. My gosh, you guys are about to make my head explode. Is there a way to turn this thing off? There was a momentary silence before Jade sounded again. No, but your headache should be wearing off soon, he replied apologetically. I immediately felt a soothing calm coming over me. The pain subsided slowly as I experienced a nourishing light. Hey, how did you do that? I replied, patting my head frantically. The pain, it's gone. I've connected you with a specialist, he explained. I stared around the room as if she would magically appear as he continued. Shidiel is a medical expert. She offered to patch you up, he said, ignoring my wondering demeanor. Oh, thanks, Shidiel, I replied hesitantly. She can't hear you, he replied. She's merely sending electrical signals to your nervous system. Well, yours and about 30,000 others. Yeah, enough about Tim. What do you mean by we're already popular? Eve interrupted, brushing off my injury like it was a boring television show. I stared, almost hurt by her demeanor. Man, good to know you cared, Eve, I replied sarcastically. Truly, your concern is embarrassing me. I only hurt myself saving your life. She grimaced apologetically with a chuckle. Sorry, she replied with an innocent smile. That was kind of rude. It's just, we're kind of all over the place. I'm just trying to keep us focused. I shook it off as Max continued. Well, as you guys heard from your evil friends in New Angeles, you guys are quite the story here in the Heaven Realm, he replied. My mind instantly went back to the words of the rebel angels. He was right. Through all the commotion, I had forgotten his jab at us. Oh yeah, what did he mean by that? Luke questioned. Just what he said. All this has been reported to the higher-ups. Your battles have been televised for the entire Heaven Realm. You guys are a big story there. Wait until you see. It's crazy, but it's also hard to explain. You'll see it firsthand once you get here. We're sending the coordinates to your jumpers now. Hurry up. We'll meet you at the hull port. We all stared at each other like kids who were robbed of a bedtime story. What? Hello? Jade? Max? I replied, waiting for an answer, annoyed that they would really end the conversation without finishing the story. Max? Jade? Are they serious? We all turned to Michael instinctively as a last resort. Dude, you guys need to stop the BAU stuff because your manners are terrible, Luke objected. This coming from the guy who burps hallelujah every Christmas dinner, Sai jabbed. It wouldn't be Christmas without it, he replied. I'm sure we'd manage, she shot under her breath in a sarcastic tone. Luke hugged her lovingly as she fought back a chuckle. Michael, what were those guys talking about? Jacob asked, leaning against our stair railing. I would love to tell you, but I have a date with a meteor flying toward a third heaven world in about 4 seconds, Michael replied with a mischievous smile. Oh no, Michael, don't you dare, Luke shot as a light emanated around the angel. As he spoke, a beautiful gate appeared out of nowhere. I got the feeling he was just yanking our chains about the mortal danger, but I was still confident he had more important places to be. That was the thing about Michael that separated him from the other angels. He always seemed to be pressed for time. My mind wondered where Father Yahweh needed him next. I'm sure it was more important than catering to our vanity. The light continued to get brighter as he spoke to us from inside the star-like state. "You'll get the answer you're looking for. Trust me. Head through those gates and you'll meet Jade and Max on the other side. Your passport and files are in those coordinates that were just sent to you. Stay together, or you'll be whisked back here faster than you can blink," he explained, speaking through BAU. "You guys will pass this thing easily. Well, maybe not easily, but you'll pass. Maybe. But for now, duty calls. Keep your faith. I'll see you guys when this is all over." "Michael," I pleaded to no avail. "Man!" With his final words, he vanished into thin air, leaving us all begging for answers. "Did you guys see that? I mean, he just vanished into thin air," Pete asked in a state of disbelief. "Did you see it?" "Well, he is an arc," Beth replied timidly. "I know, but I wonder what that is. Is it subatomics or metaphysical?" he asked out loud. "I wonder if I could do it." Pete made himself as thin as paper before returning to normal. He shot off like a rocket, catching himself right before he hit the wall. "Well, that wasn't it. This is frustrating. If it was subatomic, I should be able to do it too," he continued. "Yeah, if you leave out his few millenniums of training and him being an arc," I jabbed in angst. "Other than that, anything you can do, and so forth." The gang chuckled as Pete continued, ignoring my jab. "That's not what I meant. The question is important because I can learn it step by step. It could be useful in adding to my speed." "He did it too fast, though. I can't even figure out the groundwork," he replied, still powering up and trying different ways to perform the technique. "A better question is why you care," Sam interjected to everyone's surprise. His movements startled Sai and Eve, forcing them to jump back in shock. "Wow, I thought you were dead," added Zek, poking him. "Hey, stop, you little troll," Sam replied, knocking his hand away. "Sam," Eve uttered, hugging him. "Are you all right?" Well, it seemed she was capable of feeling sympathy for a comrade, just not me. "Well, it's good to see you're not playing favorites," I said, hoping she'd disagree. Eve rolled her eyes, shaking her head playfully. "Shut up, Tim," she warned, slugging me in the arm. She and Sai quickly helped him to his feet as he sputtered before gaining his footing. "Sam, I thought you were going to be out at least until we got to the Heaven Realm," Sai asked, helping him up. "No, I wasn't. I could hear everything, but that hit that guy gave me was brutal. I felt trapped in my own body. I could see everything happening around me, but I couldn't speak or move," he explained, balancing himself out. "Yeah, your body was put out of commission," Jacob added, patting him on the back. I could see Sam's face as they all surrounded him. He was like a kid in a candy store. My guess was it was the first time in his life he had been around people who had cared about his well-being. He blushed as they prodded and congratulated him. "Well, at least we know that power of yours has a limit," Eve joked. "Getting knocked out twice in one outing is evidence enough." Sam shook his head, bashfully denying her words. "Well, the first time with the Nightwalkers, maybe," he replied begrudgingly. "But the second time, it wasn't the guy's blow that knocked me out. I did it to myself." "Wait, what?" I asked, walking over to him. "What do you mean?" "I was afraid of what I might do, so I sort of short-circuited my nervous system," he replied. "What you might do?" I replied, caught off guard. "We could have used some of what you might have done." "Tim, shut up," Eve rebutted, almost knocking me over. "The kid probably was just afraid. I mean, that weird white flame wasn't normal. Is that what you mean?" "Yeah, it scared me," Sam replied blushingly. "Do you know where it came from?" Pete questioned. "No, not really," Sam answered. "It just happened." "Well, I'm just glad you're okay," Sai added with a smile. Okay, enough with the lovey-dovey crap, Luke interrupted. Let's just get through this gate and on to the heaven realm so we can get started on this light guard tryout. They're called the light guard trials, Jacob corrected. Whatever, Luke replied. Just saying, Jacob poked. My dad says these people are sticklers. You have to be careful about the customs there. Great, I added, dropping my head, annoyed. I feel like I'm going to one of Dad's stuffy Christmas parties. You guys make sure you have your backpacks, he continued. When we pass through this gate, you'll feel a jolt, but don't be alarmed, it's just a purge. The whole thing will take a couple of seconds, and we'll be on the other side. Wait, no wormhole? I questioned. No, this place is like a hub. No matter where you are in the universe, it's instant travel, he replied. How do you know all this stuff? Luke added, astonished. I don't, it's just stuff I picked up from my dad, he replied. I asked a lot of questions, okay? Now let's just go. We approached the gate cautiously. It was the brightest gold I had ever seen. I stood waiting alongside everyone else. They all looked at the gate like it was a burning house. I stared at them as they began to form a line behind me. Why does it always have to be me? I said reluctantly. Hey, it was your idea to do this, Luke replied. Therefore, you volunteer for anything that looks dangerous. He had a point, but still his approach lacked tact. I exhaled before turning the knob. The gold steel seemed to liquefy at my touch. It traveled up my arm and quickly began to cover my entire body. I felt something lifting me up as a cooling feel came over me. The liquid was pleasant. It calmed me like a warm bath. Without warning, I found myself standing in a hallway with a light at the end of it. I turned as Sai slowly appeared out of nothingness. Whoa, I said, falling on my butt in shock. Where did you come from? Your house, she replied. I turned the knob after you did. Slowly, one by one, they all began to appear until the entire legion was present. Where do we go from here? Pete asked, staring me in the face. I don't know, I replied. I literally got here about 30 seconds before you did. What, am I an expert now? Shut up, Tim, he shot back. Jacob? Luke questioned, turning to Jake. I told you I don't know, but it looks like we're supposed to walk into that light, he replied, pointing ahead. Says who? Uriah pressed. It was the first time he spoke since we arrived from the battle. I was beginning to think he was a mute. Says every near-death experience in history, Jacob replied. Little Eli, lead the way, he replied, patting me on the back. Don't call me Little Eli, I replied, agitated by his phrasing. My bad, little man. I didn't know it was such a sore subject, he surrendered, putting his hands up. You have no idea, Pete responded. Greater men than you have been slandered for the words you have just spoken. But don't worry, he's used to it, Sai jabbed. You and Pete are really starting to make me reevaluate the benefit of a best friend, I fired back. If you guys aren't here to make me look good, then honestly, what's your worth? Sai chuckled out loud, turning to Eve, who joined with a roll of her eyes. Will you just go, Tim? Eve interrupted, forcibly pushing me forward. Okay, but this is the last time, I replied. At some point, you guys are going to have to give me a break. Yeah, just keep moving, guinea pig, Jacob fired, pushing me forward. The light began to get brighter and bigger with every step I took. I heard a loud whoosh, then what sounded like chatter before I could open my eyes from the intense glare of the light. I looked down, and to my surprise, I was wearing a fancy tuxedo. A crowd of people stood around me, snapping pictures. Young Mr. Eli, said one man, standing in front of a camera with an extended microphone. How does it feel to be in the heaven realm, Mr. Eli? What? I replied, trying to get my bearings as the light bulbs and cameras snapped. It was like a red carpet affair. We were all taken by surprise. Questions were coming from everywhere. We couldn't believe what we were looking at. Where are we? And why are we wearing these clothes? Eve asked, covering her eyes as we made our way down the red carpet. Does it look like we know? Sam replied, tugging at his tight-fitting tux. I figured you understood I knew you didn't know, Eve fired back. So be quiet and let someone who knows the answers speak. Whoa, some sparks flying as our young stars make their way down the red carpet, replied a man, talking into a robotic camera-like device. With every step we took, the path became more and more congested. We couldn't move. The crowd of what appeared to be reporters were pressing in on us. Mr. Eli, is it true that you took down an entire rogue base by yourself? Said another reporter. I haven't seen the footage, but I heard it was impressive. I couldn't see with the light bulbs flashing all around me, and the reporters made it hard to hear as well. But through the questions and bulbs flashing, I could faintly hear a voice I knew. I covered my eyes and saw a glimpse of Jade standing at the end of the carpet, signaling me over. There's Jade, you guys, I pointed out, fighting my way through the crowd. He's right outside that door. My sudden pause caused Pete to barge into my back. I turned to help him as he chimed out in frustration. Oh man, this is ridiculous, he groaned, stumbling to his feet. Come on, Pete, watch out, Sam uttered, helping him out. I made my way to Jade, who was standing just outside the door. As I walked through the door, I stopped in my tracks. The sky was beautiful. There were crazy colors that littered it and gave it a glowing hue. There was a faint light that sparkled like Christmas lights in December in the distance. I turned to see a strip that was lit like Times Square. The technology was out of this world. Everything was amazing. I turned to see a hologram as big as a building with the words, Legion Theta Delta arrives, and pictures of us smiling in the background. Are you guys seeing this? I asked, unable to believe my eyes. Oh my gosh, this is awesome! Pete yelped, throwing his arms around my neck and shoulders. I fought loose and fixed my hair, smiling from ear to ear. He was right. I was filled with such pride. It was such a humbling experience. It was overwhelming to see the beauty of it all. I promise I feel like I'm about to pop out of these shoes, Eve grunted, pulling her high heels. What 12-year-old needs high heels? I'm like the tallest girl in the 6th grade. I turned to see her trickle out alongside her sister and sigh. I hadn't noticed them before then. They were drop-dead gorgeous. My mouth was on the floor. They all wore white dress skirts with gold trim. Their hair was done up like movie stars as they smiled from ear to ear. Man, Jade and Max weren't lying. It looks like we are a pretty big deal, Sai said, staring at the hologram in awe. Literally. This is too much, Eve uttered. Oh my gosh, Beth seconded, covering her mouth. Luke, who seemed to be soaking up every moment, wore a smile as he and Jacob sputtered out the door, posing as the cameras continued to flash. Now that's what I call a welcome, Luke said, hugging Jake. Are you seeing this, Jay? Yeah, it's pretty cool, Jacob replied. Zek and Joe looked a little less thrilled. They exited behind Jacob and Luke, tossing their hair, trying to free it from its moosey state. Zek's hair, which I had always thought was white, was actually brown. He continued to toss it until it returned to its previous state. After he had it perfectly formatted, he used his ability to change to give it its icy white color. Man, now we'll never be able to sneak out again, Zek said, turning to Joe. I know, Joe replied, upset. Danielle seemed all too comfortable with her surroundings. She made her way through the doors, speaking with what I assumed to be her father. She was followed by a couple of rows of levitating bags. Uriah ducked and dodged them as she made her way past him. He almost ran into her as they both exited the circus of the red carpet. She was standing in the middle of the doorway talking. She seemed all too familiar with the show, as she continued to talk like she didn't even see the cameras and microphones. Calm down, Daddy. I'm fine. We're here, Danielle chattered with her finger to her ear. Yes, I'm fine. I can take care of myself, you know. Oh! Uriah slightly bumped her as he knifed through her legion of bags. She turned to him with an exhausted roll of her eyes. Uriah, please, she said under her breath in an aggravated tone. Who are you talking to? Uriah questioned. Excuse me, BAU, Danielle grunted in an annoyed tone, pointing to her ear. Oh, sorry, Uriah apologized. Jade stepped out of a luxurious, futuristic limo, signaling us over to him. It's a lot to take in, huh? Jade added. Well, it gets better. He moved to the side, inviting us into the luxurious limo. We all enjoyed the scenery until a lady walked past, staring at us, studying our faces. She stopped and stared at me, then at the billboard, then back at me. She paused for a second, as if to be making sure I was who she thought I was before she spazzed out. Are you... Oh my gosh, are you Timothy Eli? She said, covering her mouth. Her words seemed to get the attention of the people around her. They all stopped what they were doing and began to gravitate toward us. Timothy Eli, my kid loves you, one man replied, walking toward us. Can I get a lasting image of you? Sigh, oh my gosh, you're my daughter's favorite, a woman replied. Even Beth, we've got to get a picture with you guys, said another man. Come on, you guys, we have to go or it's going to get real crazy real fast, Jade ordered, pulling me into the limo. Okay, Jade, we're coming, I objected, feeling the whiplash of his pull. I made room as they piled in after me. The limo was as plush and loaded as the RV from our training days. I walked freely, still unable to believe how amazing the technology was in the heaven realm. I'll never get used to how amazing this place is, I harped, staring at the scenery. It's like everything's a house. Would you look at this? Sai uttered, looking out the window. People had their faces pressed up against every window, breaking their necks to get a look at us. This is crazy, Uriah sighed, falling on one of the luxurious couches with an exhale. Where's Danielle? Eve asked, looking around. Don't worry about her. She's been around this type of circus her entire life. This is nothing new. She's taking a separate limo. She'll meet us later, Jade intervened. Okay, so are you going to explain this craziness or what? Luke added, fixing his tux. Oh yeah, no problem. You guys sit here and I'll try my best to show you some of the news feeds over the past couple of months, he replied. He moved his hand as a holographic image appeared out of nowhere. It was a transparent square that was barely visible. We all fumbled to get into position around the square, anxiously waiting to hear the story behind the whirlwind of crazy that had just occurred. As we all settled in, the hologram sputtered, then showed a woman and a man sitting at a news desk. The woman was cute, with a sweet disposition. The man was chisel-jawed, with a tux much like the one I wore. They smiled into the camera as they began their broadcast. Hi, Heavenly Realm. I'm Malachi Michael, and this is Lael Gabriel. Welcome to the Heaven to Earth Hour, your update and news headquarters for the Earth Realm. He spoke with a smile. Wait, so there is an actual television show dedicated to broadcasting events on Earth? Sai chimed in, surprised by his premise. Yep. Much like your local nightly news, the Heaven Realm reports to specific quadrants that fall into specific realms. Now, this particular show's target audience is people who have passed from the Earth Realm. There are some 900 trillion quadrants in this realm. They are separated into quadrants based on realm natives, except for a couple of tribes and important light hereditary lines. In this realm, people like to know what's going on in their native realms, so these shows give those updates on when to expect family and loved ones. It's one of the highest rated shows in each quadrant. What do you mean, one of the highest rated shows? Are you saying there are multiple shows about our realm? I questioned, sitting up. Well, yeah. There are sports, movies, sitcoms, game shows, and pretty much everything you would find on television in your realm. Quadrants are nothing but a representation of the cultures of the past population's native realm. Your customs and activities don't change because you pass on. Most of the programs you loved to watch are there as well. It's just more PG, he replied. Awesome! Are you saying there's football, basketball, and even baseball here? Luke replied. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Imagine a game where the players don't get older and have superhuman abilities. Let's just say it makes for some great games. Not to mention we have some of the greatest players of all time. Same goes for movies and shows as well. Imagine some of the greatest writers, actors, and composers of all time working and collaborating. The projects are light years ahead of your realms, and it doesn't hurt when the special effects are done by guys who can bend physics, he replied with a smile. Amazing. I guess that's why they call it heaven, huh? Uriah spoke with a smile. Well, when you're used to it, it's not so hot, Zek replied with an annoyed sigh. Yeah, they raved about that guy Gary Hill for about a year before he arrived, and his first movie stunk. Yeah, it took him years before he came out with something decent, Joe replied, taking his shoes off, still noticeably uncomfortable with his clothing. Heaven's Glance was okay, Max rebutted. Boring, Zek replied, undoing his tie. All that talking? Snooze fest. Just give me some action. You're too young to understand art, Max continued. Like I said, boring. If you want art, go to a museum. I go to movies to be entertained, Joe added. Clam up, Zach. It was entertaining, Max fired back. Max, Jade intervened with a loud and embarrassing grunt. They're kids. I know, it's just... I get touchy about my movies, he replied. Yeah, I know. Just keep it together, Jade advised. We chuckled at the spat, surprised by the immaturity of his display. I think he's okay, Pete added with a shrug. Okay, enough about Gary Hill, Jade intervened. Let's just move forward with the show, please. JDL nodded in agreement before punching a button on his watch to restart the broadcast. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the year. The Light Guard trials are upon us, and this year the Council has a special treat for its viewers, Lael continued with a smile. Yes, Lael, it seems that one of this year's trial legions will contain some prestigious heritage lines, Malachi continued. We caught up with Abdiel Raphael. He is one of the 12 elected lower council members, and we checked in with the councilman to get a scoop on the story that is causing a frenzy in the Earthrealm quadrants. Our Surah Daniel has the story. The screen cut to a handsome man that looked like a movie star. His hair was cut short, and he wore a suit much like the one we had, except the gold trim on his uniform was much thicker. He also wore it with a little more pizzazz. Is everyone in this realm good-looking? Eve sighed, staring at the screen. What do you mean? Jade said with a confused demeanor. Nothing, Eve responded with a joking smile. Lightborns. The report panned to a reporter standing outside a beautiful building. She was as gorgeous as the man was handsome. She stood with her microphone in her hand with a name moniker at the bottom of the screen that read Surah Daniel. Thank you, Max and Lori. We are here on site. In a couple of months, thousands of trial legions will converge and battle each other for the opportunity to be admitted into the Light Guard trials. But one trial legion has the competition committee buzzing. I sat down with lower council member Abdiel Raphael to get the scoop on the Earth Quadrant's newest stars. The screen panned back to the man already replying to a question asked. Well, yes, it is true that the Trial Legion Theta Delta is composed of some pretty strong hereditary lines. I am excited to see what they can do, just like a lot of others are, but coming in, they won't get any special treatment. They will be treated like any other Trial Legion. They will still have to meet all the standards and requirements demanded to be admitted into the Light Guard Academy, Abdiel stated, sitting back in a chair in what appeared to be his office. He was a calm and collected man. He flashed a smile that was more endearing than any politician I had ever seen. Who is this guy? Sam asked, staring at the hologram. He is one of the 12 lower council members, Max replied. Who are they? Pete asked without pause. The 12 lower council members are 12 elected officials from different quadrants across the Heaven Realm, he replied. They oversee the Light Guard trials and select the candidates they deem to be worthy enough to attend the prestigious academy. The reporter on the scene paused in between his reply before asking another question. There has been a lot of speculation that they will be paired against another highly publicized trial legion, the Alpha Beta Alpha Legion with star standout Paul McMillan. Is there any truth to this speculation, and can you shine light on the selection process? She questioned. The man smiled and sat forward like many of the politicians my dad made me watch in the Earth Realm. They usually gave me the creeps. They looked at their audience like a pervert looked at a child without their parents, but this guy didn't give me that feeling. He seemed more genuine than those guys. Well, as you know, the trial legions are paired based on competition. And yes, entertainment is factored into it, but not at the expense of being unfair to the competing legions. Truthfully, the ABA Legion has experience that is beyond a lot of the legions already admitted into the Light Guard Academy. The Theta Delta Legion has little to no training and has just been assembled. Right now, pairing them with such an elite legion would be premature. The man was about to continue, but before he could, Jade turned the hologram off. Hey! We all grumbled at once. Why'd you do that? Luke asked. I wanted to hear about this ABA Legion. Yeah, and this kid Paul McMillan, I replied. You're getting ahead of yourself, Max added, putting his hands up in a surrendering manner. Listen, we just wanted you to see the interest in your journey, Jade cut in. The other stuff isn't important right now. That report was from 3 months ago. Ever since then, every media outlet and holopress has been delving into every aspect of your journey. Over that time, you guys have become mega celebrities. He paused, rubbing his palm hesitantly. A look of embarrassment seemed to appear on his face as he continued. The next leg of your journey will be a little more on the vain side, he added ruefully. What do you mean, a little more on the vain side? I added, confused by his phrasing. Well, just like in your realm, when you're big business, everyone wants a piece of you. Albeit, you don't have to worry about con artists in this realm. But you get... well, what I mean, people want more of you guys. And for that to happen, just like in your world, you're going to need a publicist, agents, and other people to control your affairs, he replied, uncomfortably fumbling with every word. Are you saying we're going to have agents and stuff, like movie stars? Eve added, slightly flattered. Well, yes, Jade replied, somewhat surprised by Eve's reaction. I mean, that is, if you guys are okay with that. Of course, Luke added, busting. We all nodded at various moments as an arrogant feel came over my formerly humble legion. I couldn't believe we were that big of a deal. Whether it was our battles or our hereditary lines, something about us had the heaven realm going crazy. I looked out the window as the beautiful buildings whizzed by my window view. It was life imitating the roller coaster ride I had been on since I croaked. Everything had been going by so fast I never got a chance to admire the beauty all around me. A month ago, I was the insignificant brother of the town superstar and the son of a town legend. Now I was a superstar in heaven. I couldn't hide the smile that emanated from my face. But then again, why should I be surprised? There is a reason everybody wants to get to heaven.